And hello, welcome to this video of playing with .NET Core. Well, we are not actually doing .NET Core in this video, but some background knowledge we will need to understand for .NET Core. And in this video, we are going to talk about editing and creating tables in MariaDB. Okay, MariaDB is the open source, one of the open source forks of MySQL, if not the main one. So it's a structured query language, database language. And the way I liken MySQL is that it's like you're making tables. Okay, you're making tables. So I use these tables mainly to store chemical process data, or I do chemical engineering, or heat transfer, all this kind of engineering stuff. So I did chemical engineering. So a very common thing I do is like to store temperature, pressure, and mass flow rate data. Okay, so for example, I want to make a table like that, and let's call this pump01. I'll put I have a component called pump01. I call the component type, I can call this a pump. Okay, so there'll be a pump pumping some liquid through a circuit. Maybe the temperature here is 293 Kelvin. Okay, 1013. This is 1 atmosphere. Mass flow rate maybe 0.8 kg per second. I don't know, I'm just giving it random numbers. So I want to do the same thing like this inside my MariaDB. Okay, can I do that? Okay, answer is of course yes. And the way we need to do that is to start making tables. So we create tables like this. Okay, so remember we actually store tables under databases, so we need to make a database first, and then we make a table. Okay, so how do we make the table or database? So we are in MariaDB now. We were on the nation database the last video, but we'll make a new database from scratch. So create database. Okay, maybe you call it chemical engineering database. Okay, so that's okay. That makes the chemical engineering database, and then I will need to use the chemical engineering database. It's very long. Okay, I did not type the G here, so I'm in the chemical engineering database. Okay, so I'm making the chemical engineering database, and I want to have a table that looks like this. Okay, how many so I will need to actually make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns. Okay, 6 columns, and of course there's just one row of data here. So let's talk about how to make a table. So to make a table, we have to use something like that, but don't worry, I mean there's a lot of things going on here, but don't worry, let's just go through these things one by one. Now let's see, the first to create a table, we use the create table keyword right here. Create table, we use the create table keyword right here. Okay, and over here will be the table name, and then you'll have brackets right here. Okay, you have a bracket right here and a semicolon at the end. Within the brackets, these will actually be your column names. So your first column name, at least for this table, is called project ID. Okay, project ID. So usually, well, we have numbers here, right? We have numbers here. So usually this will be some sort of ID right here. Okay, this will be some sort of ID right here. So so this will be the ID. Okay, over here I will have component name, component type, and this will be actually what we call text data, otherwise known as strings. So let's start writing that out first before I explain everything. So so create new table, or create table. Okay, let's call this component data. Okay, then open and close the brackets, or rather let me open the bracket. Okay, let me open the bracket and type whatever I want over here, and at the last part, then I will close and semicolon the bracket. Okay, so let's press enter, and then I'll be brought to this line here. Then okay, what's the first what's the first line? First line will be int, it will be just be the ID, or I'll just call this component ID. Okay, component underscore ID. Alright, instead of project ID, I use component underscore ID. I will use the integer number here. Okay, auto increment, well, what does it do? I explain that later, but let's just put this as the integer. Let's just put this as the integer. int for integer, put a comma and press the next line. Okay. If you don't put your semicolon in first, it will allow you to do this. Okay, so what we have just done is our first column. Okay, let's do our second column here. I will just call this, oh, pardon me, this is the first column, this is the second column here. So let's do this component name. So if I want a space between the component and name, I will need to use this open and close inverted commas. So let's do component name. Alright, and then what will this be? This will be a string. Okay, a string. Alright, I don't know if they have a string right here, string, or they'll use this thing called the variable character. Okay, apparently MariaDB has string data types. Okay, you can go to mariadb.com/kb/en. You'll be able to see some string data types here. Okay, so a character is a fixed length string right here. Okay, and this varchar, variable character, this is a variable length string. So we can also use variable character if we want our string length to be variable. Otherwise we use the character, which becomes a fixed length string. So I don't know whether we can just put string over here, and this, I don't know whether this will work, but I'm gonna try. If not, we'll just use the variable character. Okay, and there's this thing called not null keyword. Again, what are those? I can explain later, but let's start with the basics. Okay, so component name will be string. What's the next thing? Temperature in Kelvin. So open and close, temperature, okay, in Kelvin, and then what's next? Temperature in Kelvin, close inverted commas, and then what will this be? This will be a double type. Okay, double. So if you want to look for valid data types, you can take a look here. So there's a double is just a floating point number. Floating point means that there's a decimal. Okay, decimal. Okay, so let's use a double type here. Okay, so I'll just leave it be. I hope they don't ask for any number of characters. Okay, but okay, let's just continue, and now I'm going to talk about pressure, mass flow rate, and let's see what happens. Okay, pressure. So what you need to do is to specify the column name and specify the data type that is expected in that column. So let's put a double here for pressure, and then mass flow rate. And remember, always put your commas in, if not you will not be going anywhere. And then 0.8, and then we'll stop here, and then we'll close our oops, I don't want to be doing that. I should not put 0.8. This is not the correct data type. So I'll probably get an error, but let me just close and do it first. And let's close the thing and put semicolon, and we'll see what the syntax is, what kind of problem there is. Okay, so you have an error in your SQL syntax. Check the manual that corresponds to your MariaDB for the right syntax to use in near component name string. So here we will have a problem here, component string, The double also has a problem, but pressure also has a problem, and of course the mass m dot dot dot, which is the mass flow rate bit. Okay, so we'll need to correct some of this. Okay, so if we just type the up keyword, we will actually see all these things pop up. So let's change the thing from component name string to variable character. Or, well, there are two things missing, right? One is that it's using a variable character. The other thing is that I think it's expecting a certain number of characters that to be put in. So let's put in the string first. Maybe I'll put 255 inside just to see what happens. Okay, so the using string 255 doesn't work. So, well, looks like we'll just have to use character instead, the variable character instead of string. Okay, you have an error in your SQL syntax. Please check the manual, blah blah blah. Okay, it looks like this component name variable character 255. I think you should put a not null inside. Okay, what is not null? Now before I go on, yeah, let's discuss what not null is. Okay, so I'll use the example if we just add another pump to this table. You have pump 02, the component type is pump, the temperature and pressure mass flow rate all the same. But let's say you omit this data, right? Omit this data. Now, should component type be missing for this table? Okay, answer is, well, it should not be missing. Okay, but I guess you can still infer from the component name that this thing is supposed to be a pump. But if you leave this part empty, this is technically called a null. Okay, null just stands for places in the table where you have empty data. So if let's say, well, can component name be null? Yeah, if you leave the component name here, is this data set still valid? Okay, answer is no, because you're just supplying me random strings of random numbers which don't really make sense. So things like component name right here should not ever be left empty. So for things that should never be left empty, use the not null keyword. Okay, not null keyword. Okay, so that's what you must put in there. Okay, I think I forgot to put in component type right there, but let's try the not null. Alright, so this thing well, I've made it such that it corresponds to this. So okay, doesn't seem to work. Okay, so what else is wrong with this statement? Okay, let me Control L to clear everything. What else is wrong with this statement? Perhaps there are a few things that are missing. Okay, of course this 0.8 thing is wrong. We should use double for this. Okay, and of course you'll notice one more thing over here in the MariaDB table, the example tables. They specify something called the primary key. Okay, again, what is that? I'll come and explain in a while, but let's try eliminating the other errors first, and let's see what happens. Okay, it's still complaining of syntax. Okay, it's still complaining of syntax, so we'll need something here. Okay, for example here, your double may need some kind of inputs into it. So what's the deal with a double? Okay, so double, well, you're supposed to put in two things here. One is M, one is D. What is this M and D? For example, here you have 5 and 0, right? 5 and 0. What is this? 5 and 0. Okay, M is the total number of digits. Okay, M is total number of digits. So when you put a double here, you specify what is the total number of digits, and then D is the number of decimal places. Okay, number of digits following the decimal places. Okay, if M and D are omitted, okay, values are stored to the limits allowed by hardware. A double precision floating point number is accurate to approximately 15 decimal places. Okay, so apparently, okay, you can kind of leave the double thing empty, and that will be okay. So it looks like the last thing that we need to put in, just besides the column name, is this thing called primary key. Okay, so now let's try to explain primary key. So primary key is, well, if you leave if you enter a data entry like that, the second data entry, the ID is number 2, well, the component name and the component type is like missing. Okay, component name and component type is missing, but how can you so-called uniquely identify this data set? Well, you look at the ID, right? You look at the ID. The ID is the must-have column for everything. Okay, the must-have column. So the ID is the unique identifier, so that even if you put this thing, you use this same entry here, pump01. Maybe I'll just put a second entry over here. Okay, 101323 or something like that. How do you actually differentiate this pump01 from this pump01? Well, their IDs are different. Okay, these two IDs are different. So this is a hypothetical example, of course, where you have two pieces of data sets from this pump01. Okay, the only way to so-called differentiate these, okay, in fact, if I make all the data the same, this almost looks like a duplicate entry, right, of pump01 and pump01 here. Okay, the ID here is the thing that kind of distinguishes both of them, and the ID will always be unique. Okay, so for things like this, where you want to differentiate similar data sets, you use this ID thing, and the proper name for this ID column, okay, for this ID thing is called the primary key. And a primary key is a unique identifier that, you know, makes sure that you can differentiate different sets of data right here. So the primary key is essential for actually defining a table. So let's add our primary key. What should our primary key be? I'll put primary key, and what should it be? It should be this component ID, right? Component ID. Okay, so again, we still have some SQL syntax errors. Okay, so what could those be? Well, we can actually follow these kind of things here. Yeah, to sort of debug this, I'm of course playing around with this MariaDB. Well, we can actually put in the number of digits and decimal numbers here. Okay, so and of course put not null for each of these things. So let's try all of these. Okay, so for example, temperature double, the temperature in Kelvin double, this should be not null. Okay, that's in case that is the I'm eliminating one source of bug at a time. Okay, it's still complaining of a syntax error. Okay, so I already explained what not null is. I have determined that this not null is not really the primary cause of the error. The other thing I probably want to do is to include this auto increment in here. Auto increment. What is auto increment? It basically means that when you add a new piece of data, okay, the next ID will just be this last ID number plus 1. So in fact, if you actually pull this list down like so in LibreOffice, you'll see that the numbers automatically increase by 1 after each row. So if you are inserting data and you want the primary key thing to be like just automatically increasing, you use this auto increment function. So maybe that is missing. So let's try auto increment. Okay, still has some issue. Okay, well, if that's the case, maybe we should not be using strings as the column names. So, well, over here, this thing here is a string. So maybe it's complaining because we are using strings here as the column name. So let's try taking that out. Okay, so let's take out the pressure thing, and we also take out the temperature string. We'll change them into a proper names instead of strings for the first part. And then let's see. Okay, so probably that was the issue, is because we cannot just use this strings as the name of the column of the table. So let's do quickly show tables. Okay, so we'll see component data will be the first table that we make. So how do we actually view the table? Well, to view the table, you can use this from keyword, from which table select everything. So from is the first keyword we enter. So we'll use from component data, select star. Okay, what does it say? From the table component data, select everything. Okay, if you type this, nothing will show up. Okay, or select star from component data. I think that's the correct one. Oops, select star from component data, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, this is the correct. So I kind of got the syntax mixed up and reversed. So what it says here, select everything from the table component data, and then it will just show a very empty table. Okay, right, Control L to clear everything, and of course that is a very messy way of doing things. Okay, but it seems that by default you cannot use strings to create this table. Now let's say before I start inserting tables, I just want to show you how to delete tables. Again, the table name, the way to delete tables is to use this thing called drop table. Okay, because just now our table is very messy, we can actually just drop the appropriate table. Okay, drop means to delete the entire table, so you can drop tables or you can drop databases to delete entire databases or delete tables. So be very careful when you use this command. Okay, drop table component data, semicolon, and that will delete everything here. So let's try the show tables again. There's nothing over here. Okay, so yeah, quite okay. So this is the basic thing of how to create the table columns, okay, and how to delete a table. So we have been playing around with creating tables and the columns there. Okay, so we have experimented around and tried to make sense of it, and apparently, of course, not all the ways of doing it is correct, but you know, it's a good way to learn by just fiddling around with this thing. Okay, so I think that's enough for today. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.